Teachers of Reddit, what's the coolest thing you've confiscated of a child? One of my teachers took my yo-yo and tried to do a trick she once knew and smashed a window. One of my teachers took my yo-yo and said I was pretty good at this back in the day. He then proceeded to do about 5 tricks in succession. We were all impressed. I was a very casual yo-er, and he gave me this smug look and said, "Show me your best trick." I shamefully put the yo-yo back in my bag. Now that's an adult role model. When you're old as dirt, humorless English teacher walks the dog and then goes around the world, visits the Eiffel Tower and then rocks the baby, you garner a new kind of respect. A redback spider from the gently closed palm of a 7-year-old boy's hand, almost every recess for a month before I figured out a way to make him stop. He was never bitten. What made him finally stop? I told him I'd keep him down to repeat a year 2 if he did it again, because it's not very smart to kidnap a poisonous spider away from its family. Venomous, not poisonous. How did you get him to remove it out of his palm? Did you put it in a jar and throw it out or what? I'd be eating myself if I saw one. He took it to the bushes and let it crawl off his hand. Live dragonflies. He was a little 4-year-old boy that would never listen to any of the rules and generally just cause a lot of trouble. Anyway, he would catch dragonflies without harming them. When you told him to release them, he would open his backpack and 2 or 3 dragonflies would fly out. The dragonfly kid. You would not believe your eyes. If 2 or 3 dragonflies came into the world as I opened my bag, cause they fill the open air. Scorpion in a jar. The kid had put in leaves, twigs and even some smaller bugs for it to eat. Made a real habitat. However, he was clumsy as hell and had a top locker above a concrete floor. No way I was going to risk him smashing the jar and letting it loose in corridor. Gave it back to him at the end of the day with very clear instructions it was not to return to school. Edited to add. Yes, I am in Australia, but in the south, so wasn't a particularly venomous scorpion. The sting would have caused about the same level of irritation as a bee sting. As for someone non-allergic, during the summer between my 9th and 10th year, our area was invaded by these giant wasps that were at least 3x the size of the normal paper wasps and yellow jackets we usually had. Huge, scary looking frikers that sound like helicopters when they fly, and they were everywhere. I managed to catch one on a mason jar, and it was big enough to take up more than half the bottom of the jar when it wasn't flying. I brought it to school to see if my biology teacher could eat it. He could not, but he kept it anyway. That was a pretty good response on your part. My son took his pet glass snake to school in 5th grade BC. His friends didn't believe he had a pet snake. He brought it in his DS game case and upon revealing it, the majority of children apparently freaked out. His teacher also freaked out and sent him to the principal, who made him release it into the woods behind the school before they even called me. My son was upset. I was livid to say the least, but nothing to be done at that point. Was it a native species? Still shouldn't have made your son release it, but I hope they didn't have him release an exotic snake of some kind. It was a native species, so there wasn't the concern of releasing an exotic animal. I did think it was rude not to call beforehand. Yeah, it's still BS from the school for sure. I know some species of snake can't survive if caught and released into a new area, even if it's the right habitat. But most people either don't care about snakes or outright hate them, so I doubt the school would have worried about any of that. A raw egg spray painted silver. A live bird caught outside. A homemade hand buzzer. A Luchada mask. Are your students the Penguin, Catwoman, the Joker and Bane? Can I offer you an egg in these trying times? I like to imagine these are all from the same kid, on the same day. When I was a casual teacher, I confiscated a knife from a 5-year-old. He threatened me with it when I tried to get him to do his work. It was my first week. Now that's a freaking rough school. We've been spending most our lives living in a gangster's paradise. Churn butter once or twice, living in an Amish paradise. As I walk through the valley where I harvest my grain, I take a look at my wife and realize she is very plain. But that's just perfect for an Amish like me. You see, I shun fancy things like electricity. Not a teacher, but one time a teacher confiscated a kid's PSP. It got stolen overnight, so she had to buy him a new one. physics was tense from then on out. Damn, that sucks unless he stole it and then made the teacher buy him another one. Boom, instant profits. That happened to me back in grade school with my TI-83 calculator. I left it on my desk, so the teacher put it on his desk to give to me later, and some asshole stole it off the teacher's desk. Those things were like $100. Later that day, the idiots tried to sell me my own calculator. I just showed him my initials carved into the back of it, and kept it. Dumbass. Those things are still like $100, it's actually so dumb. I always wonder what the teacher did with dad's XXX mag I brought to school when I was 7. It's probably why you got to leave early that day. There was a big conspiracy of exam paper trading going on around the area my school is located in. Some kid figured out a way to get the independent exam that several of the schools would purchase each year. He sold copies to anyone who would buy them, including our students. We confiscated a copy of the exam with a different school's logo on it before it was issued to our students. Eventually my school figured out we couldn't buy exams from this seller anymore as the papers for most subjects, English, Maths, Chem etc. always made it to the kids through the black market. To my knowledge, the seller was never caught. I'm just imagining a young Edward Snowden leaking documents then hiding out behind the bike sheds. Sounds like an episode of Recess or Hey Arnold. A lot of drugs. Some really awesome lighters. A number of flick knives. Knuckle dusters. And my personal favorite, a kitten. He found it on the way to school, brought it with him and had it in his locker, with lots of airflow and a blanket for comfort. I caught him trying to smuggle a saucer of milk to it. We went on a school trip to New Mexico and one kid found a dog running around on the res gas station we were at. He smuggled it into the back of the school van and the teacher didn't notice until we were about 30 miles out in the middle of nowhere when he tried to sneak the dog some beef jerky. Teacher let him keep it because she couldn't justify dropping it off in BFE. What's BFE? Bumfrick Egypt. It means the middle of nowhere. I'm a teacher as well and 2 years ago we had a girl smuggle in a little pit bull puppy. She tried to make a bed for it in her locker. But of course the little guy was terrified and yapped like crazy. We all took turns babysitting him until school ended and she could take him home. She found him wandering on the road on the way to school that morning and stopped to pick him up. He was super cute. That's the setup of an Archie comic. Frozen water bottle full of frozen margarita he was passing to his friends. 8th grade homeroom, so 13-year-olds sharing a cocktail at 8 AM. It was actually kind of clever hiding in plain sight. It did just look like a bottle of frozen water, but my teacher sense told me something was up. Girl in my high school got busted with a water bottle of vodka. Got busted because she kicked the bottle across the floor to another student. Instead of, passing it in plain view like people would do with a normal water bottle. The odd behavior tipped the teacher. Girl had been bringing it for years without getting busted. A kid at mine got caught with Everclear in a shampoo bottle on an overnight school trip at a hotel. He had forgotten to move it from the in-room fridge to the shower during room inspection. A teacher looked the entire room over and found nothing wrong. Even congratulated the kids on not having anything they should. Then on the way out half-jokingly said something along the lines of, "And I bet you all must have all sorts of prohibited stuff in the fridge," and opened it, noticing the shampoo bottle. Those kids could stomach straight Everclear, but not warm booze. What a bunch of amateurs. And he wouldn't have gotten away with it too if it weren't for those meddling teachers. My teacher sense told me something was up. These children aren't usually drunk. A dildo. It was found in the school garden. The kid came up to me and said, "I found a ding dong in the garden and I'm taking it home for mum." I was not professional that day. So thoughtful. Kid had daddy issues apparently, lol. Or mommy issues? Mommy had daddy issues. One time in high school my geometry teacher tried to take the phone of a kid who she thought was texting during class. Turns out, he had cut a hole in his jacket and was actually just fapping. So, she confiscated the peanuts. A note that said, "School makes me feel like a dog waiting to be euthanized." Honestly, the things the youth of today come up with. Muffin, how do you feel about euthanasia? Her mother's clitoral vibrator. She brought it to school, age 8, and told her friends it was the student's tension reliever, and that her mother told her to rub it across her forehead when she felt mad. She then had all of her classmates do the same. To be fair, I didn't confiscate it, my in-room intervention specialist did, and Myers had no idea what it was, so she took it with her bare hands, put it in her pocket, and carried on with her day. Later on, she tried to hand it off to me and I clued her in. Just another reason Myers that year hated me with a burning passion. Edit to add, we called the mum. Mum confirmed what it was, that it was used as such. Kid had stolen it without permission. Also, it is short for intervention specialist, just like the sentence right before I began using the abbreviation. An intervention specialist is a special ed teacher. I worked in an elementary school for kids with oppositional defiance disorder, so 95% of the kids there were special ed with extreme anger issues. Just another reason Myers that year hated me with a burning passion. It's your fault for being better informed than I am. Should have kept the tension reliever. I was visiting a good female friend one day. As we were chatting in the living room, her 2 young daughters fighting over a vibrator. Mom, I found this in your room. What is this? My friend, blushing with embarrassment, told them it was a neck massager. The kids spent the next 30 minutes taking turns massaging their necks with this thing, lol.